Hey guys, welcome back to another video from Hoops Empire. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down the decisions the Celtics are faced with in this year's free agency. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We just hit 2,000 subs, and it's only up from here. So, to recap so far, the Celtics kicked off the offseason by making a blockbuster move for former Wizards big man Kristaps Porzingis. The original deal was meant to send reigning Sixth Man of the Year Malcolm Brogdon to the Clippers in a 3-team deal. But due to a race against the clock with Porzingis' player option, the Celtics pulled the plug on that deal and looked to different options, eventually sending long-tenured point guard Marcus Smart to the Grizzlies in return for the sought-after big man from the Wizards. The Celtics were able to obtain 2 first-round picks out of that deal as well, while also sending out Mike Muscala and Danilo Gallinari, as well as the 35th pick. One of the obtained first-round picks was the 25th pick in this year's draft, and the other being a Warriors first-round pick next year, top 4 protected. Through a multitude of moves, the Celtics turned that 25th pick into 5 second-round picks, one of which included taking 6'7" forward Jordan Walsh out of Arkansas. I won't go into too much detail on the impact that guys like Porzingis and Walsh will have, because if you check out my 2 latest videos, that's what I broke down there. So check out those for a complete breakdown of those deals and selections. Moving to free agency, the Celtics have a handful of choices to make regarding the makeup of their team this offseason, ranging from franchise changing to just altering the bench. Let's kick it off with the possible, but more likely probable, Supermax extension of 7-year Celtic Jalen Brown. I have done contract breakdowns for Jalen Brown in the past, whether on this channel or through Twitter, but for the sake of just being days away from the deal potentially being inked, let's do a thorough examination of the situation. By making the All-NBA second team in the 2022-23 season, Jalen Brown just snuck in as Supermax eligible, due to All-NBA being one of the few prerequisites that would qualify a specific player for that illustrious Supermax. He did in fact have a career season, posting a career-high 26.6 points per game on a career-high field goal percentage and free throw percentage. However, the main question remains, is statistical improvement all that matters when it comes to looking at player value? Looking deeper into statistics, he also posted a career high in turnovers, with a near 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. Jalen was one of the highest usage players this past season, posting a 31.4% usage rate. Out of the 16 players who had a usage percentage of at least 30%, Jalen was dead last at 16.5% in assist percentage. The average of the other top 16 players was 30.5%. Using the advanced stat LeBron, which I know the name sounds funny, but it's actually a respected statistic in the basketball world, there were 63 players that had at least 60 touches per game. Of those 63, ranked by LeBron rating and LeBron offensive points added metric, Jalen Brown was ranked 41st and 42nd respectively. These stats are per Basketball Index. Highly recommend subscribing to them. Moving to a different statistic, on-off, Jalen Brown had a negative 3.9 net rating swing this season, meaning the Celtics' net rating was about 4 points worse per 100 with Jalen Brown on the court this season. Pretty glaring numbers for someone who is likely about to get a monstrous long-term contract. And don't get me wrong, this is not to say that Jalen Brown is a bad player or anything like that. I just question if his on-court value matches the on-paper value the Celtics are about to sign him to. And again, I've stressed this before, but I do not think Jalen Brown is a playmaker, nor should he be used as such. I understand that he is relatively young and has time to get better, but in reality, he's entering year 8 and still does not have a consistent handle, nor a consistent ability to playmake for others. I think what it comes down to is Brown being used as a play finisher, so to speak, meaning that other players get him to his ideal matchups and spots and let him work from there. He's still a good isolation player, and he could still be used as a high-usage player, but just put him in spots to succeed, and not the primary ball-handling positions the Celtics have often put him in. Once free agency opens up in a day or two, Jalen Brown will be eligible to sign that Supermax extension. Previously, this deal was going to be roughly 5 years, $294 million, but after Shams Charania of The Athletic reported just a few days ago that the cap projections this upcoming season finalized at about $3 million higher than originally expected, his deal is going to be even more lucrative. Based on the fact that Supermax deals get 35% of the salary cap in the year they come into effect, as well as 8% annual increases after that, the new deal comes in at a whopping 5-year, $307 million extension, subject to change, of course. This is obviously an absurd amount of money, And at a certain point, no matter how big a Jalen Brown fan or Celtics fan that you are, you have to understand the implications on the cap that this will have. As explored in prior videos, the new collective bargaining agreement sets up a new second apron that is $17.5 million over that year's luxury tax. Teams that cross this threshold lose their taxpayer mid-level exception, their ability to sign buyout players, and plenty of other penalties. Let's look at the Celtics salary cap table in the year that Jalen Brown's extension would come into effect, being the 2024-25 season. For the sake of this video, we're just going to assume that any free agents Boston has this offseason and next offseason do not re-sign, including Kristaps Porzingis, Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, and others. Based on this projection, the Celtics would only have about 7 rostered players, adding up to about $150 million. This would include Jason Tatum, still on his current contract, Jalen Brown in the first year of his Supermax, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, Robert Williams, Al Horford, and Sam Hauser. Now, let's assume that the Celtics re-sign Kristaps Porzingis, and let's call it around $35 million a year. Just adding Porzingis to that roster of 7 players brings the Celtics to about $185 million for the 2024-25 season. Keep in mind, the salary cap that year is $149 million, and the luxury tax is $181 million. This means that the Celtics would have 8 players on their roster, needing to sign 7 more to complete the team, with the ability to sign pretty much just some veteran minimums and the mid-level exception. When it becomes even more daunting is the season after that, when Jason Tatum's Supermax comes into play. Having 2 Supermax deals on the same team is pretty unprecedented, something the league has never seen before. Based on current projections, Tatum's starting salary will be roughly $57 million that year. Factoring in Jalen Brown's contract and the aforementioned potential Porzingis extension, we could be talking about over $150 million tied up in that big 3 of the Jays and Kristaps Porzingis. 3 players, making what adds up to be virtually the entire salary cap. Filling out the rest of the roster is something I don't even want to think about at this point. The Celtics have a few options. The most likely is that Jalen Brown is signed to the Supermax, and the Celtics figure it out at a later date. The second option is try to offer Jalen Brown the regular max contract. It could be the difference of about $50 million saved overall, and about $12 million per season if the Celtics offer him the base 30% instead of the 35% that you get with a Supermax. And the last option, and probably the least popular, is either letting him walk or finding a trade for him. Whatever the Celtics decide to do should be quite interesting. Moving on to other internal free agency decisions, Grant Williams. The Celtics have officially extended the qualifying offer to Williams, meaning that the Celtics will have what is known as the first right of refusal, meaning they can match any offer sheet another team offers to Grant Williams. However, the question is, with some lower-level teams like Houston, Orlando, and others having plenty of cap space as well as potential interest, if a deal gets too lucrative, will the Celtics even want to match the contract? If the answer is yes, then Boston will go over that second apron and lose the aforementioned abilities to continue to add to the roster. However, in the Kristaps Porzingis introductory presser, Brad Stevens did say that he has the green light to continue spending and adding through trades and free agency. Corroborated with Grant Williams himself saying that the door is very much open for a potential return to Boston, the option of the Celtics outright signing him or matching him to an offer sheet seems increasingly likely. If the answer is no to matching or signing, then the options from there are letting him walk and saving the cap hit, or finding a potential sign and trade scenario. If it's the first option, the Celtics currently have a roughly $13 million cap hold for Grant Williams. Letting Grant walk and sign with another team lifts that hold, and allows the Celtics to pursue players using their taxpayer mid-level exception. As I broke down in a previous video, there are obviously a ton of options. Some I mentioned were Josh Richardson, TJ Warren, and Seth Curry. These are just some of a few, as there are dozens of candidates, but time will tell. Things get even more interesting, however, if the Celtics choose to sign and trade Grant Williams. Some teams that have been rumored with interest for Grant are the Mavericks and the Orlando Magic. There are a few options, as there does have to be a similar level of salary matching. But for the Mavericks, it could be a player like Maxi Kleber or Tim Hardaway Jr. For the Magic, this could be a guy like Markelle Fultz, as the Magic do have an excess of guards at this point. And the final point I will bring up is to bring back Blake Griffin. I feel like Blake Griffin brought a lot of bench value to the Boston Celtics this year. Obviously, with the addition of Porzingis, he will likely see the floor even less than he usually would. I feel like the camaraderie he brought to the team this year has been matched by very few over the last few seasons for Boston. He would likely be back on a veteran's minimum, And in reality, vet minimums don't often have much impact on a team anyways. So for locker room chemistry purposes, I don't see why the Celtics couldn't do this. And that'll pretty much wrap it up for today's video. With free agency looming, it seems the Celtics could be in for some even more significant change than has already been underway. But whatever does happen, make sure to stay updated with the channel as I plan on breaking down every move the Celtics make this offseason. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already. But most importantly, have a good one.